All right. Hello, hello. How's everyone doing? How's everyone doing? Welcome to Bookcasting. So for today, I honestly have had no idea what to do for this week. So I figured I'd just read some spooky stories and yeah, no rhyme or reason to this stream or not stream. I did say stream. Sorry, podcast. There we go. There's no rhyme or reason to this podcast. Just me having some fun reading something. Let me just pop up an image. Pictures. Give it like a scary picture for the background, just so I have something to look at. There we go. Yeah, I like that one. We'll go with that. Perfect. View image. Yeah. There we go. Something to look at. Alright. So let's read some spooky stories tonight, Dave. What have you? Yeah. Sorry. Right, let's get to it. In Bullard County, Alabama, there was a haunted house, and you had to spend the entire night so you could tell what happened during the wee hours. There was a guitar playing and songs, so the guests had music to console themselves. Gamblers and preachers, drunkards, and other dissipated classes had come to amuse one another and see what happened. The first thing to come in at 12 o'clock was a big black cat, and he would come sit by the hearth with his back to the fire and his face to the guests. Then, for 1 hour, the wind would blow, and the lights would go out just as fast as you lit them. So the guests would get scared and run out, and they couldn't tell anybody anything about what happened in that house but this. The black cat can't come in, and the lights went out. Some more guests came. The cat came in with them, standing there with his back to the fire and the face to the people. The guests began playing music. They intended to stay until day. The wind began to blow, and all the lights went out again. They stood the whole hour, and the lights came back on. Now when the wind rose, the door was already locked and thumb-bolted, but it flew open. In walked a pair of white feet. The feet stood before the fire with their heels to the fire, and their toes pointed to the people. When the door opened again, the legs came in and joined the feet. The door was still locked. Next time, the thighs came in and joined the legs. Now when the door opened, in came the body and joined onto the thighs. Next time, in came the arms and joined onto the body. When the door opened again, the head came in and said, "Now, by God, we got the man." The guest said, "No, by God, I don't know if you got the man or not. I know this, you gotta run on your hands." The people began to run so fast you couldn't see them. And that was a haunted house. Yeah. Anywho, that's the first little spooky story that we decided to read just for to start off with. The next one we'll go ahead and see what to go after next. Let's go. Where's? Aha. There we go. A Touch of Pestilence by Ray Bradbury. On an otherwise ordinary evening in May, a week before his 29th birthday, Jonathan Hughes met his fate, commuting from another time, another year, another life. His fate was unrecognizable at first, of course, and boarded the train at the same hour in Pennsylvania Station, and sat with Hughes for the dinner-time journey across Long Island. It was a newspaper held by this fate disguised as an older man that caused Jonathan Hughes to stare and finally say, "Sir, pardon me, your New York Times seems different from mine. The typeface on your front page seems more modern. Is that a later edition?" "No." The older man stopped, swallowed hard, and at last managed to say, "Yes, a very late edition." Hughes glanced around. "Excuse me, but all the other editions look the same. Is yours a trial copy for a future change?" "Future?" The older man's mouth barely moved. His entire body seemed to wither in his clothes, as if he had lost weight with a single exultation. "Indeed," he whispered. "Future change. God, what a joke." Jonathan Hughes blinked at the newspaper's dateline, May 2nd, 1999. "Now see here," he protested, and then his eyes moved down to find a small story minus picture in the upper left-hand corner of the front page. "Woman murdered. Police seek husband. Body of Mrs. Alice Hughes found shot to death." The train thundered over a bridge. Outside the window, a billion trees rose up, flourished their green branches in convulsions of wind, then fell as if chopped to earth. The train rolled into a station as if nothing at all in the world had happened. In silence, the young man's eyes returned to the text. Jonathan Hughes, certified public accountant of 112 Plandome Avenue, Plandome. My God, he cried, get away! But he himself rose and ran a few steps back before the older man could move. The train jolted and threw him into an empty seat, where he stared widely out at a river of green light that rushed past the windows. Christ, he thought, who would do such a thing? Who'd try to hurt us? Us? What kind of joke? To mock a new marriage with a fine wife? Damn! And again, trembling, damn, oh damn! The train rounded a curve and all, but threw him to his feet. Like a man drunk with traveling gravity and simple rage, he swung about and lurched back to confront the old man, bent now into his newspaper, gone to earth, hiding in print. Hughes brushed the paper out of the way and clutched the old man's shoulder. The old man, startled, glanced up, tears running from his eyes. They were both held in a long moment of thunderous traveling. Hughes felt his soul rise to leave his body. Who are you? Someone must have shouted that. The train rocked as if it might derail. The old man stood as if shot in the heart, blindly crammed something into Jonathan Hughes' hand, and blundered away down the aisle into the next car. The younger man opened his fist and turned a card over, and read a few words that moved him heavily down to sit and read the words again. Jonathan Hughes, CPA, 679490, Plandome. No! Someone shouted. Me, thought the young man. Why, that old man is... Me? There was a conspiracy, no, several conspiracies. Someone had contrived a joke about murder and played it on him. The train roared on with 500 commuters, who all rode swaying like a team of drunken intellectuals behind their masking books and papers, while the old man, as if pursued by demons, fled off away from car to car. By the time Jonathan Hughes had rampaged, his blood had completely thrown his sanity off balance. The old man had plunged, as if falling to the farthest end of the commuter special. The two men met again in the last car, which was almost empty. Jonathan Hughes came and stood over the old man, who refused to look up. He was crying so hard now that conversation would have been impossible. Who thought the young man who was crying for? Stop, please stop. The old man, as if commanded, sat up, wiped his eyes, blew his nose, and began to speak in a frail voice that drew Jonathan Hughes near, and finally caused him to sit and listen to the whispers. We were born. We, cried the old man. We, cried the young man. We, whispered the old man, looking out the gathering dusk, the travel-like smokes, and burning past the window. We, yes, we. The two of us. We were born in Quincy in 1950, August 22nd, yes, thought Hughes, and lived at 49 Washington Street, went to Central School, and walked to that school all through first grade with Isabel Perry. Isabel, thought the young man. We, murmured the old man. Whispered the old man. Us, and went on with it. Our woodshop teacher, Mr. Brisby, history teacher, Miss Monks. We broke our right ankle, age 10, ice skating, almost drowned, age 11. Father saved us, fell in love, age 12, Impey Johnson. Seventh grade, lovely lady, long since dead. Jesus, God, thought the young man, growing old. And that's what happened. In the next minute, 2 minutes, 3, the old man talked and gradually became younger with talking, so his cheeks glowed and his eyes brightened, while the young man waited with old knowledge given, sank lower in his seat, and grew pale so that both almost met in mid-talking, mid-listening, and became twins in passing. There was a moment when Jonathan Hughes knew for an absolute insane certainty that if he dared glance up, he would see identical twins in the mirrored window of the night-rushing world. He did not look up. The old man finished his frame erect now, his head somehow driven high by the talking out the long-last revelations. That's the past, he said. I should hit him, thought Hughes. Accuse him, shout at him. Why aren't I hitting, accusing, shouting? Because, the old man sensed the question and said, you know I'm who I say I am. I know everything there is to know about us, now, the future. Mine. Ours, said the old man. Jonathan Hughes nodded, staring at the newspaper clutched in the old man's right hand. The old man folded it and put it away. Your business will slowly become less than good. For what reasons, who can say? A child will be born and die. A mistress will be taken and lost. A wife will become less than good. And at last, oh believe it, yes, do, very slowly you will come to, how shall I say it, hate or living presence. There, I see I've upset you. I'll shut up. They rode in silence for a long while, and the old man grew old again, and the young man along with him. When he had aged just the proper amount, the young man nodded the talk to continue, not looking at the other, who now said, "Impossible? Yes. You've been married only a year, a great year, the best. Hard to think that a single drop of ink could color a whole pitcher of clear fresh water, but color it could, and color it did. And at last the entire world changed, not just our wife, not just the beautiful woman, the fine dream. You, Jonathan," Hughes started and stopped, "you killed her. We did, both of us. But if I have my way, if I can convince you, neither of us will. She will live, and you will grow old to become happier, finer me. I pray for that. I weep for that. There's still time. Across the years, I intended to shake you up, change your blood, shape your mind. God, if people knew what murder is, so silly, so stupid, so ugly. But there was hope, for I somehow got here, touched you, begun the change that will save our souls. Now listen. You do admit, do you not, that we are one and the same, that the twins of time ride this train this hour, this night." The train whistled ahead of them, clearing the track of an encumbrance of years. The young man nodded, the most infinitely microscopic of nods. The old man needed no more. "I ran away. I ran to you. That's all I can say. She's been dead only a day, and I ran. Where to go, nowhere to hide, save time. No one to plead with, no judge, no jury, no proper witnesses, save you. Only you can wash the blood away, do you see? You drew me then. Your youngness, your innocence, your good hours, your fine life, still untouched, was the machine that seized me down the track. All of my sanity lies in you. If you turn away, great God, I'm lost. No, we are lost. We'll share a grave and never rise and be buried forever in misery. Shall I tell you what you must do?" The young man rose. "Plandome," a voice cried. "Plandome." And there we're out on the platform, with the old man running after the young man, blundering into walls, into people, feeling as if his limbs might fly apart. "Wait," cried the old man. "Oh, please!" The young man kept moving. "Don't you see, we're in this together. We must think of it together, solve it together, so you won't become me, and I won't have to come impossibly in search of you. Oh, it's all mad, insane, I know, but listen!" The young man stopped at the edge of the platform where cars were pulling in, with joyful cries, unmuted greetings, brief honkings, gunnings of motors, lights vanishing away. The old man grasped the young man's elbow. "Good God, your wife, mine, will be here in a moment. There's so much to tell. You can't know what I know. There's 20 years of unfound information lost between which we must trade and understand. Are you listening? God, you don't believe." Jonathan Hughes was watching the street. A long way off, a final car was approaching. He said, "What happened in the attic at my grandmother's house in the summer of 1958, no one knows that but me." "Well?" The old man's shoulders slumped. He breathed more easily, as if reciting from a prompt board, and said, "We hid ourselves there for 2 days alone. No one ever knew where we hid. Everyone thought we had run away to drown in the lake or fall in the river, but all the time crying, not feeling wanted, we hid up above and listened to the wind and wanted to die." The young man turned at last to stare fixedly at his older self, tears in his eyes. "You love me, then?" "I had better," said the old man. "I'm all you have." The car was pulling up at the station. A young woman smiled and waved behind the glass. "Quick," said the old man quietly. "Let me come home. Watch, show you, teach you. Find where things went wrong, correct them now. Maybe hand you a fine life forever. Let me—" The car horn sounded. The car stopped. The young woman leaned out. "Hello, lovely man," she cried. Jonathan Hughes exploded a laugh and burst into a manic run. "Lovely lady, hi!" "Wait!" He stopped and turned to look at the old man with the newspaper, trembling there on the station platform. The old man raised one hand questioningly. "Haven't you forgotten something?" Silence at last. "You," said Jonathan Hughes. "You." The car rounded a turn in the night. The woman, the old man, the young, swayed with emotion. "What did you say your name was?" the young woman said, above the rush and run of the country road. "He didn't say," said Jonathan Hughes quickly. "Weldon," said the old man, blinking. "Why," said Alice Hughes, "that's my maiden name." The old man gasped inaudibly, but recovered. "Well, is it? How curious. I wonder if we're related, you." "He was my teacher at Central High," said Jonathan Hughes quickly. "And still am," said the old man, "and still am." And they were home. He could not stop staring. All through dinner the old man simply sat with his hands empty half the time, and stared at the lovely woman across the table from him. Jonathan Humes fidgeted, talked much too loudly to cover the silences, and ate sparsely. The old man continued to stare as if a miracle was happening every 10 seconds. He watched Alice's mouth as if it were giving forth fountains of diamonds. He watched her eyes as if it was all hidden wisdom of the world were there. And now, found for the first time by the look of his face, the old man, stunned, had forgotten why he was there. "Have I a crumb on my chin?" cried Alice Hughes suddenly. "Why is everyone watching me?" Whereupon the old man burst into tears. That shocked everyone. He could not seem to stop until at last Alice came around the table to touch his shoulder. "Forgive me," he said. "It's just that you're so lovely. Please sit down. Forgive me." They finished off the dessert, and with a great display of tossing down his fork and wiping his mouth with his napkin, Jonathan Hughes cried, "That was fabulous, dear wife. I love you." He kissed her on the cheek, thought better of it, and re-kissed her on the mouth. "You see," he glanced at the old man, "I very much love my wife." The old man nodded and quietly and said, "Yes, yes, I remember." "You remember?" said Alice, staring. "A toast," said Jonathan Hughes quickly, "to a fine wife, a grand future." His wife laughed. She raised her glass. "Mr. Weldon," she said, after a moment, "you're not drinking?" It was strange seeing the old man at the door to the living room. "Watch this," he said, and closed his eyes. He began to move certainly and surely about the room, eyes shut. "Over here is the pipe stand. Over here the books. On the fourth shelf down a copy of Isley's The Star Thrower. One shelf up, H.G. Wells' Time Machine. Most appropriate. And over here the special chair, and me in it." He sat. He opened his eyes. Watching from the door, Jonathan Hughes said, "You're not going to cry again, are you?" "No, no more crying." There were sounds of washing up from the kitchen. The lovely woman out there hummed under her breath. Both men turned to look out of the room toward the humming. "Some day," said Jonathan Hughes, "I will hate her. Some day I will kill her. It doesn't seem possible, does it? I've watched her for an hour and found nothing, no hint, no clue, not the merest period, semicolon, or explanation point of blemish, bump, or hair out of place with her. I've watched you, too, to see if you were at fault. We were at fault in all of this." And the young man poured sherry for both of them and handed over a glass. "You drink too much is about the sum. Watch it." Hughes put his drink down without sipping it. "What else? I suppose I should give you a list, make you keep it, look at every day, advice from the old crazy to the young fool. Will you? For how long? A month? A year? Then, like everything else, it'll go. You'll be busy living. You'll be slowly turning into me. She will slowly be turning into someone worth putting out of the world. Tell her you'll love her. Every day. Promise. It's that important. Maybe that's where I failed myself. Failed us. Every day. Without fail." The old man leaned forward, his face taking fire with his words. "Every day. Every day." Alice stood in the doorway, faintly alarmed. "Anything wrong?" "No, no." Jonathan Hughes smiled. "We were trying to decide which of us likes you best." She laughed, shrugged, and went away. "I think," said Jonathan Hughes, and stopped and closed his eyes, forcing himself to say it, "It's time for you to go." "Yes, time." But the old man did not move. His voice was very tired and exhausted and sad. "I've been sitting here, feeling defeated. I can't find anything wrong. I can't find the flaw. I can't advise you. My God, it's so stupid. I shouldn't have come to upset you, to worry you, disturb your life, when I have nothing to offer but vague suggestions. It ain't cryings of doom. I sat here a moment ago and thought, I'll kill her now. Get rid of her now. Take the blame now as an old man, so the young man there, you, can go into the future and be free of her. Isn't that silly? I wondered if it would work. It's that old time travel paradox, isn't it? Would I foul up the time flow, the world, the universe? Why, don't worry, no. Don't look that way. No murder now. It's all been done up ahead, 20 years in the future. The old man, having done nothing whatever, having been no help, will now open the door and run away to his madness. He arose and shut his eyes again. Let me see if I can find my way out of my house in the dark. He moved. The young man moved with him to find the closet by the front door and open it, take out the old man's overcoat, and slowly shrug him into it. "You have helped," said Jonathan Hughes. "You have told me to tell her I love her." "Yes, I did do that, didn't I?" They turned to the door. "Is there hope for us?" the old man asked suddenly, fiercely. "Yes, I'll make sure of it," said Jonathan Hughes. "Good, oh good, I almost believe." The old man put one hand out and blindly opened the front door. "I won't say goodbye to her. I couldn't stand looking at that lovely face. Tell her the old fool's gone. Where? Up the road to wait for you. You'll arrive some day. To become you? Not a chance," said the young man. "Keep saying that. And my God, here." The old man fumbled in his pocket and drew forth a small object wrapped in a crumpled newspaper. "You better keep this. I can't be trusted. Even now, I might do something wild. Here, here." He thrust the object in the young man's hands. "Goodbye. Doesn't that mean God be with you?" "Yes. Goodbye." The old man hurried down the walk into the night. A wind shook the trees. A long way off, a train moved in darkness, arriving on departing. No one could tell. Jonathan Hughes stood in the doorway for a long while, trying to see if there really was something out there vanishing in the dark. "Darling," his wife called. He began to unwrap the small object. She was in the parlor door behind him now, but her voice sounded as remote as the fading footsteps along the dark street. "Don't stand there letting the draft in," she said. He stiffened as he finished unwrapping the object. It lay in his hand, a small revolver. Far away, the train sounded a final cry which failed in the wind. "Shut the door," said his wife. His face was cold. He closed his eyes. Her voice. Wasn't there just the tiniest touch of petulance there? He turned slowly off balance. His shoulder brushed the door, drifted, then the wind, all by itself, slammed the door with a bang. Let's see. What's the next one I should read here? Okay. We'll do Vengeance Is by Theodore Sturgeon. You have a dark beer. In a place like this, you want dark beer? Whatever then. The bartender drew a thick walled stain and slid it across. "I worked in the city. I know about dark beer and Guinness and like that. These yokels around here," he added, his tone of voice finishing the sentence. The customer was a small man with glasses, not much of a beard. He had a gentle voice, a man called Grimmy, the barman corrected. "So you heard. Him and his brother." The customer didn't say anything. The bartender wiped. The customer told him to pour one for himself. "I don't usual, but the barman poured. Grimy and that brother Dave, the worst. He drank. I hate it a lot out here. Yokels like that, this is why. There's still the city. Not for me. The wife? Oh." And he waited. "They lied a lot. Come in here, get drunk. Tell about what they done. Mostly women. Bad what they said they done. Worse when it wasn't lies. You want another? Not yet. No lie about the Fawnin kid. Marcy, 14, 15 maybe. Tukin her out behind the Johnson silo. What they done to her. And then they said they'd kill her. She'd said anything? She didn't. Not about that. Not about anything ever again. 2 years. Until the fever last November. She told her mom. She died. Mom came told me before she moved out." The customer waited. "Hear them tell it. They were into every woman, wife, daughter in the valley any time they wanted." The customer blew through his nostrils once gently. A man came in for 2 six-packs and a hip-sized Southern Comforter and went away in a pickup truck. "Monday busy, I call this," said the barman, looking around the empty room. "And here it's Wednesday." Without being asked, he drew another beer for the customer. "To have somebody to talk to," he said in explanation. Then he said nothing at all for a long time. The customer took some beer. "They just went after local folks then, Grimy and David." "Well, yes, they had the run of it. The most of the men off with lumbering. Nothing grows in these rocks around here except maybe chickens, and who cares for chickens? Old folks and the women. Anyway, that Grimy shoulders this wide, eyes that close together and hairy. The brother, maybe you'd say a good-looking guy for a yokel, but, well, scary." He nodded at his choice of words and said it again, scary. "Crazy eyes," said the customer. "You got it. So the times that wasn't just a lion. The woman didn't want to tell, and I got to say it. The men just as soon not know. But they never bothered anyone except their own valley people. Who else is ever around here to bother? Oh, they bragged about this one and that one they got to on the road, you know. Blonde in the big convertible, give them the eye, give them whiskey, give them a good time up on the back roads. All lies, and you know it. They got this big old van, gal hitchhiker, they say the first woman ever used them both. Bragging, lying. Shagged a couple city people in the little hatchback, leaned on them till the husband begged him to ball the wife. Wow. I don't believe that at all. You don't. What man would say that to a couple of hairy yokels, no matter what? Man gotta be yellow or downright kinky. What happened? Nothing happened, I told you. I don't believe it. It's lies, brags, and lies. Said they found him driving the Quarry Road, way yonder. Passed him and parked that van to let him by. Look look him over, passed him, and got ahead. Then, when they caught up, David was lying on the road, and Grimy made like artificial. You know, lifeguards do it. Respiration? Yeah, that. They seen that, and they stopped. The couple in the hatchback got out. Grimy and David jumped him, said the man's a shrimpy little guy, looked like a professor, woman's a dish too good for him. But that's what they said. I don't believe any of it. You mean they never do a thing like that? Oh, they would do it all right. Cutting off the woman's clothes to see what she got with a big old skinning knife. Took a while, they said. It was a lot of laughs. David holding both her arms behind her back, one-handed, cutting away her clothes and making jokes. Grimy holding the little professor man around the neck with one elbow, laughing till the man snatched his head clear, and that's when he said, "Give it to him." He told the woman, "Go on, give it to him." And she says, "For the love of God, don't ask me to do that. I don't believe any man ever would say a thing like that." You really don't? No way, because listen. When the man jerked out his head and said that, and the woman said, "Don't ask her to do that," then the professor guy tried to fight Grimy. You see what I'm saying? If Grimy breaks him up and stomps on the pieces, then you could maybe understand him begging the woman to quit and give in. The way Grimy told it right before standing where you are, the man said it when Grimy hadn't done nothing yet but hold his neck. That's the part Grimy told over and over, laughing. "Give it to him," the man kept telling her. And Grimy never even hit him yet. Of course, when the little man tried to fight him, Grimy just laughed and clobbered him once to the side of the neck, laid him out cold. That was when the woman turned into a wildcat, to hear them tell it. It was all David could do to hold her, let alone mess around. Grimy left him to it and went around back to see what they got in their car. Mind you, I don't know if he really done all this. I'm just telling you what he said. I heard it 3 or 4 times, just that first week. So he opened up the back, and there was a stack of pictures, painting like on canvas. He hauled them all out and put them all down on the flat on the grounds and walked up and back looking at them. He says, "David, you like these?" And David, he said, "Hell no." And Grimy walked the whole line, one big boot in the middle of each and every picture. And he says at the first step that the woman screamed like it was her face he was stepping on, and she hollered, Don't. They mean everything in the world to him." She meant the professor, but Grimy went up ahead anyway, and then she just quit. And she said, "Go ahead," and Dave took her into the van, and Grimy sat on the professor till he was done. Then Grimy went in and got his, while David sat on the man. And after that, they got in their van and came here to get drunk and tell about it. And if you really want to know why I don't believe any of it, those people never tried to call the law. And the barman gave a vehement nod and drank deep. So what happened to them? Who, the city people? I told you, I know. I don't even believe there was any. Grimy. "Oh, them," the barman says a strange chuckle, and said with sudden piety, "The Lord has strange ways of fighting evil." The customer waited. The barman drew him another beer and poured a jigger for himself. "Next time I see Grimy, it's a week, 10 days after. It's like tonight, nobody there. He comes in for a fifth of sour mush. He's walking funny, kind of bow-legged. I thought at first trying to clown, he'd do that. But every step he kind of grunted, like he would if you stuck a knife in you. But every step, and the look on his face, I never saw the like before. I tell you, it scared me. I went for the whiskey, and outside there was screaming. As he talked, his gaze went to the far wall, and somehow through it, his eyes very round and bulging. I said, 'What in God's name is that?' And Grimy said, 'It's David. He's out of the van. He's hurting.' And I said, 'Better get him to the doctor.' And he said that just came from... Excuse me. And he said they just came from there, full of painkiller, but it wasn't enough. And he took in his whiskey and left, walking that way and grunting every step, and drove off, last time I saw him. His eyes withdrew from elsewhere, back in the room, and became more normal. He never paid for the whiskey. I don't think he meant to stiff me. The one thing he never did, he just didn't think of it at the time, couldn't," he added. "What was wrong with him?" "I don't know." The doc did know. "That would be Dr. McCabe." "McCabe? I don't know any Dr. McCabe, or McCabe, around here. It was Dr. Thetford around the Allersville corners." "Ah, and how are they now, Grime and David?" "Dead is how they are." "Dead? You didn't say that." "I didn't. Not until now." The customer got off his stool and put the money on the bar and picked up his car keys. He said, his voice quite as gentle as it had been all along, "The man wasn't yellow and he wasn't kinky. It was something far worse." Not caring at all that this might mean to the bartender, he walked out and got into his car. He drove until he found a telephone booth, the vanishing kind with a door that would shut. First he called information and got a number that he dialed it. "Dr. Thetford. Hello. I want to ease your mind about something. You recently had 2 fatalities, brothers. No, I will not tell you my name. Bear with me, because you attended these two, and you probably performed the autopsies, right? Good. I hoped you had. And you couldn't diagnose, correct? You probably certified Peritontius with good reason. No, I will not tell you my name, and I am not calling to question your competence. Far from it. My purpose is only to ease your mind with presupposes that you are good at your job and you really care about medical anomaly. Do we understand each other? Not yet? Then hear me out. Good. Rather less urgently, he went on. An analogy is a disease called granulomangolii, which, I don't have to tell you, can destroy the whole sexual apparatus with ulcerations and mucorisis, and penetrate the body to and all through the peritoneum. Yes, I know you've considered that, and I know you rejected it, and I know why, right? Just too damn fast. I'm sure you looked for characteristic bacterial and viral evidence as well and didn't find any. Yes, of course, doctor, you're right, and I'm sorry going on about all the things it isn't without saying what it is. Actually, it's a hormone poison, resulting from a biochemical mutation in the carrier. It's a synergistic, widely accelerating as you saw. One effect is something you couldn't possibly know. It affects the tactical neurons in such a way that morphine and its derivatives have an inverted effect, in much the same way that antihistamines have a calming effect on children. In other words, the morphine aggravated and intensified their pain. I know, I'm sorry. I made a real effort to get to you and tell you this in time to spare them some of the agony, but as you say, it's just too damn fast. Vectors? There's something you do not have to worry about. I mean it, doctor. It is totally unlikely that you will ever see another case. Where did it come from? I can tell you that. The two brothers assaulted and raped a woman, very probably the only woman on Earth to have this mutated hormone poison. Yes, I can be sure. I have spent most of the last 6 years in researching this thing. There have been only 2 other cases of it. Yes, just as fast, just as lethal. Both occurred before she was aware of it. She is a woman of great sensitivity and profound sense of responsibility. One was a man she cared very little about, hardly knew. The other was someone she cared very much indeed about. The cost to her when she discovered what had happened was, well, you can imagine. She is a gentle and compassionate person with a profound sense of ethical responsibility. Please believe me when I tell you that at the time of the assault, she would have done anything in her power to protect those men from the effects of that contact. When her husband, yes, she has a husband, I'll come to that, when he became infuriated at the indignities they were putting on her, and begged her to give in and let them get what they deserved, she was horrified, actually hated him for a while for having given in to such murderous suggestion. It was only when they vandalized some things that were especially precious to her husband, priceless, that she too experienced the same deadly fury and let them go ahead. The reaction had been terrible for her. First, to see her husband seeking vengeance when she was convinced he could rise above it, and in a moment find that she herself could be swept by the same thing. But I'm sorry, Dr. Thetford. I've come far afield from medical concerns. I meant only to reassure you that you are not looking at some mysterious new plague. You can be sure that every possible precaution is being taken against its reoccurrence. I admit the total precautions against the likes of those two may not be possible, but there's little chance of its happening again, and that, sir, is all I'm going to say, so good. What? Unfair? I suppose you're right at that. To tell you so much and so little all at once, and I do owe it to you to explain what my concern is in all of this. Please give me a moment to get my thoughts together. Very well. I was commissioned by that lady to make some discreet inquiries about what happened to those two, and if possible to get to their doctor in time to inform you about the inverted effect of the morphine. There would be no way to save their lives, but they might have been spared the agony. Further, she found that knowing for sure if they were indeed victims was unbearable. This news is going to be hard for her to take, but she will survive it somehow. She's done it before. Hardest of all for her and her husband will be to come to terms with the fact that under pressure they both found themselves capable of murderous vengefulness. She has always believed, and by her example he came to believe, that vengeance is unthinkable, and he failed her, and she failed herself. Without a trace of humor he laughed. Vengeance is mine, saith the Lord. I can't interpret that, doctor, or vouch for it. All I can derive from this episode is that vengeance is, and that's all I intend to say to you. What? One more question? The husband. Yes, you have the right to ask that. I'll say it this way. There was a wedding 7 years ago. It was 3 years before there was a marriage, you follow? 3 years of the most intensive research and the most meticulous experimentation, and you can accept as a fact that she is the only woman in the world who can cause this affliction. He is the only man who is immune. Dr. Thetford, good night." He hung up and stood for a long while with his forehead against the cool glass of the booth. At length he shuddered, pulled himself together, went out, and drove away in his little hatchback. All right, let me read another one here. All right, let's read this. Big Bad 16. Years ago, there was a man who wore size 16 shoes. He was so big, fast, and strong they called him Big 16. One morning, Big 16 said, "I think I'll go down to the pasture and catch me a wild hog." "You're strong, but a wild hog's stronger than any man I know," said one of his friends. Big 16 ran that hog down until he caught him. "Didn't think you could do it," said his friend. "You just got lucky." To prove it wasn't just luck, Big 16 thought he tried something else to test his strength. So the next morning he wanted to put some new blocks under his house to keep it from falling down. Since there was some huge 12 by 12s in the cow lot, he thought he'd go down and see if he could pick them up. His friend said, "You need some help? You can't lift 12 by 12s all by yourself. They're too heavy." But 16 went on anyway and picked up a 12 by 12 on his shoulders like it was a piece of straw. He brought more 12 by 12s on back and used them to shore up the building. The next morning he decided to test his strength again. He said, "I believe I'll go catch all the chickens in the farmyard." "All the chickens? You can't. That's too many," his friend said. Well, Big 16 caught all the chickens roosting in the yard and the trying to get away chickens that flapped up and hid in the trees. "How many?" 2,000. His friend said, "Big 16, you're so strong and quick, I believe you can catch the devil." Big 16 said, "Yeah, I can catch him." Next morning he thought about how he'd go to catch the devil. He said, "All right, I'll need a shovel and a big 10-pound sledgehammer." Big 16 got a shovel and a hammer and walked about 200 yards in front of the house and commenced digging in the dirt, this hole. Finally he came to the devil's house and knocked on the door. The devil's wife asked, "Who is it?" He said, "Big 16. What you want? Is Jack the devil here?" he asked. "Yes." "Tell him I want to see him." The devil cracked the door open and peeked out. Big 16 tapped him in the forehead with a hammer and killed him. Then he ran, grabbed him up, and carried him across his huge shoulder back up to show him off to his buddies. His buddies told him, "We don't want that ugly thing. Take him back." Big 16 dragged the devil back and threw him in the same hole he had dug, covered up with dirt, and buried him. About 2 weeks later, Big 16 died, and he went to hell. The devil's children saw him coming, and they took off running and hiding. The devil's wife saw him coming so straight, till she slammed the door so hard she scared herself. Big 16 walked up and knocked on the door, and she asked, "Who is it?" "Big 16, he said. "Go away. Go back. We don't want you down here. You're too bad." Big 16 turned and went away. He marched on up to heaven. When he got to heaven, he knocked on the pearly gates. They asked, "Who is it?" "Big 16, he said. They said, Go on away from here. We don't want you here. You're too bad." Well, there was no place else for Big 16 to go, so he had to come on back to Earth. When he started falling back to Earth, his soul changed into a ball of fire. Even today, you can see him wandering around the Earth. We call him Jack-o'-lantern, but it's nobody but Big 16. Ah, that was a fun one. Alright. Yeah, I think that'll do for tonight stream. So, wait, I said stream. I'm sorry. I keep thinking of stream. Podcast. Anyways, yeah. Later.